welcome to my first ever uh, YouTube interview slash
Nice.
podcast. I'm sweating. I'm so nervous. Today, have a super special treat for you guys. We have Justin Sua here with me. He is a mental performance coach, and I'm going to brag a little bit about him right now. But he worked with
Uh-oh.
the Cleveland Brown, then one with the Red Sox. So he has his little champ ring. Um, he's a he's a champ too.
Yeah.
Currently working with the Tampa Bay Rays, also worked with the Broncos. He is the author of two books, Parent Pep Talk and Mentally Tough Teens. He also have his own podcast called Increase Your Impact. He does seminars. He's been working with the military in the past. Literally everyone you can think of. Pretty sure you've worked with them, and
No.
he's worked. I mean, you've worked with me for a couple of years.
Yeah, that was
I
yeah, I think it was a couple of years. It goes
Yeah,
by so fast.
yeah, and completely ruined. Oops, sorry. You're. I'm making you play on YouTube at the same time. Okay. Um. Yeah, and you've worked with me for a couple of years, and completely ruined me and my personal.
Well, good. Mission accomplished.
In the best way possible. But you are really one of those people that definitely affected my life in a tremendous way, and still are just knowing that you exist. Once in a while I'll be like, I wonder what Justin would think, and then I go cry in the bathroom, and I fix myself.
Thanks, Camille.
But yeah, so welcome.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Camille. And yeah, I we had it's been fun getting to know. I'm glad our paths crossed, and I'm trying to think how we. Well, it was like a mutual friend, I think, that helped us connect, and then getting close to Dave as well. And I love watching you guys as well. Just do your thing.
Yeah, it was pretty much after I had my shoulder surgery. I knew I was really trying to find a way to grow as a person, but since the physical component wasn't really available, I started to talk with a lot of people about trying to make my head as strong as possible, and we got
Yeah.
connected, and then that did happen. Like my head
Yeah, it
became
happened.
really,
It happened. Yeah, that's
really.
one of the things. That's one of the things about you that your close friends and family probably know. If Camille decides she's going to do something, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's cool.
to a scary point, I think, because you were like, "Wait, are you really?" Yeah, if I said I was, I will.
Exactly.
Just
I learned
know.
that very quickly.
So, I mean, gosh, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but especially like right now with everything's happening, I think there's so many change for people at home being in isolation, and like there's just a lot going on, and I think that this extra time on our hand, it makes people just even more have to sit and like assess what's happening, and I think it's is really driving a lot of people insane.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to you about like changes, just
Yeah.
how how can we help people really like attack changes, because as much as it can be the most beautiful and wonderful thing in your life, if you are able to attack it head on and learn from it,
Yep.
it can also be very paralyzing, can bring a lot of self-doubt, and just be also very destructive if you're not willing to
Yes.
go with it. So
Yes.
you're like an expert here, so
You hit the nail on the head. Even going back to your story, right, Camille? Like, so you had your shoulder injury, and it was literally kind of the point to where autonomy and control was taken from you. So the change happened to you. You didn't choose the change,
yeah.
it happened to you. And you and just anyone who goes through an injury, you're going to go through these almost the grieving process where it's like you're going to be numb, and then you're going to be sad, and then you're going to be angry, and then you're going to be okay and accept it, and then you're going to go through all those things again. And I think you're right. Like, we're hitting that exact same thing right now, where I think it's easier to adapt to change when you want to change and when you're the one making a change. Like, hey, I'm going to change my workout program, or I'm going to change my nutrition, or I'm going to change my job, something like that. But when change happens to you and you weren't planning on it and you don't want it, that is you are so right. That's when it will really even rock you because
Yeah.
it'll get you out of your routine. You hit the nail on the head. It'll cause you to feel these negative thoughts. Even so, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. When this happened to us, um, so I'm a Major League Baseball, and we're all shut down. Pro sports are done. Like you just watch ESPN, and they're just even like the sports TV network is not even showing sports right now. It's like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so for the first 3 days, it I went through like a little mini kind of depression type thing. Like to be in all honesty, where even though I knew what was happening, I know what's happening. I experienced it. I didn't want to get out of bed. I was numb. I was sad. I was thinking negative thoughts, like what's going to happen. And then time passed, and I had to kind of reassess myself and create a new temporary normal and set up okay my work schedule and my day schedule and trying to navigate this just like everybody else. But you are absolutely right. How was it for you? How's change been for you?
Um, I feel like at this point I have a little bit of experience with it. Just,
Yeah.
going from I was a full-time student, then I became a professional athlete, then I got injuries that I had to go through to now I'm no longer a professional athlete and I have like this whole new business. So I feel like reinventing myself is a quite a, been a big part of my life in general, reinventing my
Mm.
identity, what I really how I see myself as a person. But I would say and now I'm pregnant, and that's that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
that change has been harder for me than the isolation right now, just the being pregnant, because I got so sick. So I went from training 8 hours a day to being sick and nonstop to not being able to work, which for me, that's my outlet. If I can work, I'll work through any pain.
Hmm.
I just really feel like when you go through hard things, for me, when I go through hard things in my life, if I can numb it with work and feel like I have victories and build momentum on that side, it really makes me feel like at least I'm doing something, even though I might still go back to bed at night and, go back in the sadness or go back in the loneliness or whatever feeling, that is quite destructive in those periods. If I can just work my way through the day, it always helps. So I was sick for pretty much the 12 first week of my pregnancy, and
Yeah.
glued to the bed. So right now, just being able to work a little, even though we're isolated, it still feel better for me. So, but that's my
That,
way.
that's a really good point. And anyone who watches this is watching or has watched this, I think I just want to highlight something you did really, really well, and I think we can all learn from. This is new for all of us. Like we don't, it's unprecedented. Like we don't have anything to compare it to. Like where it shuts down like the world. Like we've never experienced this.
Yeah.
But what you did and what you currently do are doing so well is that you went back to your life and okay, when have I had an experience kind of like this? What did I do in the past that was similar to, oh, I worked. Okay.
Yeah.
And you kind of went reverse engineered success in the past. And so I think anyone who's watching this,
Mm-hmm.
if you're struggling, look back at a time in your life when you had to obviously not go through something like this because it's unprecedented, but when was there a time you had to overcome something difficult? Maybe there was a moment where you had to get creative. How did you do that and apply those same principles? I think that's cool that you did that, and it makes sense. Like if work is your outlet and you can't work, yes, that would make it
Yeah.
really difficult. And so the fact that you acknowledge that and recognize that now you can work more, which is I can't imagine what it's like. Never will I be able to know what it's like to carry a child, but I can imagine it is it's
It's a
incredibly
lot.
difficult.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So you were saying, the first 3 days this happened, you felt depressed and, glued to your bed and all of that. So how did you get out of that? Was it like the fact that you have the whole family there? Because I'm thinking about my heart really goes to people that are alone right now at their home,
Yeah.
that don't have like much people to keep them accountable. Um, yeah.
You're right. You're right. That loneliness destroys people, and it is debilitating. And unless you've experienced it, you don't know. You don't know. Some people with their families are like jokingly are like, "Oh, I wish I was alone. So I don't have to be around my family so much." But the reality is that loneliness is very, very difficult.
Yes.
But to answer your first question, I personally had to, number one, recognize my state that I was in and say, okay, it's okay. I'm not, doesn't mean something's wrong necessarily. Like I'm a bad person or I'm mentally weak. It's just part of being human. And then I kind of looked at, okay, what are my values? Like what do I need to have a good day? And there are components like helping people, working out, getting sufficient sleep, eating right. And I wasn't doing a lot of those things. And so I just tried to try to put those basic pillars in my life every single day now to be able to lean into the things that make me most happy and bring me alive. And then to your point about loneliness, there are some people who are by themselves and they're thriving. And the reason you ask them why they're thriving, chances are they have their go-to people. They're doing FaceTime or or Zoom meetings with people,
Yeah.
or they're trying some way to bring value to other people. But yeah, those the power of those relationships, like you said, so important, so
Yeah,
important.
I think you brought a really good point, and it's knowing your value, like knowing what you consist of. Because I know for you, helping is obviously at the center of who you are as
Yeah,
a person, and that value is also really high for me. But for me, like work is very high um, in who I am. Just I really quantify and qualify myself a lot with the way I'm working and what I bring to the table, and the way we both got out of this sort of paralyzing depression was knowing that biggest value of ours.
yes, I completely agree. And for those of you who are watching now or later on, if you're wondering, hey, what are my values? What do I do? I would suggest that if you Google VIA survey, VIA survey, it'll help you. You take this survey and it'll help you spit out what your values are, whether it be humor or keeping things in perspective or work or love of learning. And then you take a look at your day to day quarantine life and you look at yourself, and if you're struggling, you'll be like, wow. You look at your top values, you're like, wow, chances are I'm not leaning into those things. So if it's humor, you're not finding, whether it be humor, you're not watching things of humor, you're more scared than anything. If it's love of learning, maybe you're not learning as much as you used to. Maybe you're not keeping things in perspective. And so yeah, the VIA survey, Camille, you obviously put in so much work to identify, crystallize, clarify what your values are, through your, yeah, extensive work by yourself or our work together. But some people have never done that before. I would recommend, hey, head over to the VIA survey, take it, see what it's like.
Yeah, that's yes, that's exactly what I wanted you to talk about.
Nice.
Because that was pretty huge for me, and that's one of the first exercise me and you did together was to just figure out who I am, and from there really understand kind of what I act certain way and how to better react to other things when you notice that they're completely against your personal value, which doesn't mean that it's a good or a bad thing. It's just you realize why certain things really triggers you. Because, for example, for me, hard work is one of my biggest values. So when I see someone cutting corner, being lazy, really triggers me. But their value just might be something completely different, where they know how to relax and I don't.
Yeah.
So it's it's not good or bad. It's just different. So that was huge.
Great point. That's a really good point. Mind if I can I add a little bit more to that?
Yes,
Is that yeah?
please.
So going along with that, I think that is such a good point, especially now during this quarantine time. I think one of the biggest stressors for people, if you want to feel stress, there's a lot of ways, obviously, but is when you aren't acting in harmony to your values, or when your actions aren't in alignment with what you truly value. And I think that's one of the things, like you said, Camille, as well, and is to recognize we have these shadow the blind or the shadow side of our strengths and our values. But I love what you said. some of the biggest fights or the biggest complications with relationships, my own included, is when we don't value other people's values, when they value something that we don't necessarily see as a value, and but to be
Yeah.
aware of it. I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Awesome. The next thing I wanted to talk with you about is something that I'm sure you felt. I definitely feel this a lot, especially right now. And and I feel often, especially in this situation right now, guilty for not feeling good myself when I know a lot of people are going through things that are much harder than what I'm going through. So, right now I'm in isolation. I'm pregnant. We're struggling to even be able to go to the hospital and find things for me and my baby. But on the flip side, I'm healthy. We're stable. We have a roof. No one's sick. No one around me has died yet from this, and I can't shake the feeling of being so guilty for not being exploding with joy when other people are going through like much rougher time than me. And I'm sure a lot of other people are going through this, but it's a very weird I don't know, it's just weird to go through that, and you keep like being, oh my god, I'm a bad person because I feel sad. I'm not allowed to feel sad. And yeah.
Right. Right. That you bring up a really, really good point. And one of the things that I love the fact that, I mean, that just kind of goes to show your personality too, is like you're grateful and happy, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, other people might not be um, so fortunate to have the experience that you are having. And so that totally makes sense. I think if anyone finds themselves in the same situation that you are, one thing to remember is that you can't don't be ashamed of how you feel. Don't be ashamed of how you feel. Some people, whether you feel happy or whether you feel fat or fad, I was going to say frustrated
Sad,
and sad.
sad.
It's a new word. It's a new word, fad.
Sad.
A new feeling, frustrated and sad. And so
Yeah.
whatever you feel, and one thing, and I said to you, and I'll say to a lot of people, is feel. I'm never going to tell you how to feel. Feel how you want to feel,
Yeah.
because that's the compass of how your the kind of your inner dialogue and how you're feeling. And when we start to feel bad for how we feel, then all of a sudden we start self-sabotaging
Yes.
ourselves. Now, I do also want to speak on this. What you brought up is a very good point as well. There are some people who it helps them to consider the position of other people. So for example, there's some people you can tell them, oh, well, just think about other people who are going through a worse situation,
Yeah.
and that actually helps them.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what, let me keep things in perspective. Yeah, you know what, someone out there is suffering more than me, and that actually helps me. Now there are other people who that is not the case. There are other people when they try to consider somebody else's feelings, or oh, someone must have it difficult than me, it feels like they're discounting their own feelings. It's like, wait a minute, yeah, but I am me, and I'm suffering, and I'm struggling, and I'm going through a
Mm-hmm.
tough time right now. And so that's one of the things to remember, is that to not beat up on yourself. Don't feel that you have to change channels on your feelings and say, oh man, I shouldn't feel bad because there's somebody else who's going through it worse.
Yeah.
There's always someone going through something worse. And once again, I'm not saying not do that. If that helps you, then great. But also, I'm also saying, if you feel bad because if you feel bad because you're thinking, oh, I can't feel bad because someone else is going through something worse. What you're doing is you're discounting your own feelings. So no, that's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel, and we're all going through this shared suffering together. It looks different for all of us.
Yes. I think so too. I
Yeah.
think it's hard to because I feel guilty about things that I never experienced. So it's hard to put in reference because for me this is one of the biggest thing I've experienced. So I think it's normal that your feeling for your own self and your own experience is in proportion to what that experience is for you. So for someone who's already experienced like really hard things in their life, I think they have things to go back on. But when for you this is the first time that you're in all of that and uncharted territory can be very scary and quite overwhelming if you don't have much experience.
I love that. I think you bring up a really good point. Is to even understand that there are other people experiencing
I don't know how
the
to say it.
same thing you're experiencing. However, to also know that they might be experiencing it in a different way and have a different interpretation and have a different view, which is completely understandable, which is completely okay. But as you said, just as long as you're able to know it's easy to watch social media and get frustrated with people who are doing things that you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Look at this idiot. Look at these people what they're doing. Okay, you might disagree with it. Okay, you might and good. There are things I disagree with as well, but to understand, okay, and have more of a curious approach, like, huh, I wonder
Mm-hmm.
what could they possibly be thinking? Because honestly, they might think they're doing the right thing in
Yeah.
all craziness, and even though it might be right to them, you might be right to you, and not to say you have to agree with them, not to say, but at least taking it into consideration that, okay, they might be viewing this or are viewing it a completely different way, and
Yeah.
they might think they're doing it right, and which is that's what it gets complicated.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I think like there's a part where people get very frustrated with each other is where they don't understand why someone is not reacting the same way as they are. And everyone copes with things differently. And I know I've noticed that for myself because obviously I'm one of the person at risk right now. So seeing people not being as careful as I am, I'm like, why are you doing this? Um, but it's kind of, I don't know if it's hypocrite or not. I'm pretty sure I would still be doing what I'm doing right now. Um, but I don't think I would understand the impact of it maybe if I was 21 years old, back then, and you don't see anyone being affected. So maybe the reaction would have been different.
That is so true. That is so true. And it's kind of like death. For those of us who have experienced the death of a loved one, we go through the grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned earlier on in our conversation, we all have a grieving process. Now, we can also experience during a time like this. I have seen people a group of us, before this all happened, we were all together, and some people were panicked. Quite honestly, they were
Yeah.
terrified. Others were laughing and joking. Others were like, yeah,
Yes.
this isn't that big of a
Yes.
deal. And everyone is actually getting mad at each other. The ones who were joking and
Mm-hmm.
laughing were getting mad at the panicking ones, saying, why are you
Yeah.
panicking so much? And then the panicking ones were looking at the ones who are
Yeah.
flipping about, like, why aren't you panicking? And but what happens is that's how the grieving process is as well.
Yeah.
We all go through it at different stages and at different speeds and at different times. And so the sad people now, or the people who are numb, might be criticized by the sad people, and
Yeah.
it's just this complete process, and we're all going through it. And yeah, it's like you said, it's good to take into consideration that we're all there's a lot of nuances to this, and it's
Yes.
just we might not even know them all, but at least take into consideration that there are a lot of other hidden factors that we might not be paying attention to.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I think it's always easier for most people to just point the finger to someone that's acting differently than us and blaming them for whatever feeling you have or situation you think that they somehow put you into instead of more being more objective about the overall situation that is out of our control.
Yeah, exactly. How do they affect you? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really important to consider. Those who are watching this is what emotions are contagious. So you can catch someone's emotions, or you can watch something on social media and it can immediately trigger anger. It can immediately trigger sadness, or it can trigger happiness. Put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Be pay close attention to the emotions that social media is emitting for you, that
Mm-hmm.
TV channels that are emitting for you. Is it panic? Is it excitement? Is it fear? Is it
Yeah.
calm? Is it excite? And pay close attention to that, and also pay close attention to the emotions you're emitting. Are your emotions worth catching? Is your attitude worth catching? And again, I'm not saying that you need to force certain emotions, feel how you're going to feel, but pay attention to the emotions you others trigger in you. That should be a good indicator of what
Mm.
you should lean into and what you should steer away from.
Totally. I think like, different people definitely feed on different emotions. Some like if there's a little bit of negativity, they just want to like hang on to that for some reason. I'm the complete opposite, and if there's, I think if there's too much or one or the other for those people, it can really uh, throw you off and off guard. And yeah, I think it's just a really good point to, a lot of self-assessment. So how would you suggest that someone at home that's never really done any self-assessment, like where would you start? How, because I know right now it's quite a good time to start learning about yourself, because we have, I always say, when you're alone with your thought, there's no place to hide, and you can only face you for who you are. And I think a lot of people right now are in this scenario where there's not as many distractions to maybe numb this look into yourself. So if I was someone who doesn't have any experience, how could I start doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, so I'm going to give you my opinion,
Okay.
which is why we're here together. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There are a lot of different, so there's not one way to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to suggest some thoughts.
Okay.
Whether you have a mental performance coach or you don't, here's some things to take a look at. So number one are your values. I would take a look at what your values are. And you using the VIA survey, I think that's important.
Yes.
Important.
We'll
Another
put the
thing to
link
take a
for that.
look at is your purpose, your why. Take a look at, a lot of times people, number one, have never developed
Mm-hmm.
one or even thought about one. Some have, and then they haven't taken a look at it in a long time. And maybe that why doesn't drive them anymore. And the way to look at your why is to literally ask yourself some questions like, what do I value? What do I want to accomplish? How do I want to be remembered? What drives me? What do I want to learn? Why do I want to learn it? When basically, what relationships do I want to strengthen? Look, just take a look at your overall why. And here's another thing about your why is it doesn't have to be some noble, grandiose thing that you can put on social media and say, this is my why. It could be private, because some people might look at your why and be like, that's your why? That sounds so
Yeah.
selfish. And the reality with a lot of the athletes that I work with, the elite performers, if they were to tell you their why, it will sound selfish. But here's the thing. What does it what does it do? And
Yeah.
the question I ask is, what does it do for you? They're like, shoot, it gets me out of bed, it makes me work
Yes.
hard, it makes me
Yes.
eat right and sleep right. Well, good. Then
That's right.
that's where you know that's the right why for you. So your purpose would be another good thing to take a look at. Another one to look at are your goals. Grab a blank sheet of paper and a pen or a pencil and write down what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Just let your hand just go, and don't worry about if it's too big, if it's too small, if it's crazy, if it's out of this world. Just let it fly. And as you go, you're going to see these common threads. You're going to look through that. You're like, oh, I wouldn't have even thought about that. Maybe writing a book is possible. And then maybe
Mm-hmm.
pick out 2 to 5 of them and then pull those out and say, hey, this actually would excite me. What would the stages be on that? So first we have your values, then we have your purpose, then we have your goals. Another thing that you can do too is to identify some people who are really close to you and who value whose opinion you really really value.
Yes.
You grab a journal or a blank sheet of paper and you call them up, you FaceTime them, or you get them on the phone, or you sit face to face with them and you say this: I really appreciate you. And you can even say I love you depending on who you're talking
Yeah.
to. I value your opinion, and I know that what I'm going to ask you to do for me right now is going to be very difficult. I want you to be absolutely honest, and I am not going to defend myself. I am going to listen and I'm going to learn. I want you to tell me what I can do to be better. Any of my flaws, any of
Yeah.
my blind spots. Once again, I just want to get better, because if I don't hear it from you, I'm probably not going to hear it from
Mm-hmm.
anybody. You take a deep breath, you buckle your seatbelt, and you say, let's do this. And
Yeah.
it is a powerful,
Yes.
powerful exercise. You do it with 2 to 3 people who you value. Um, and here's another thing: be careful. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll just do it with my mom, or I'll just do it with my dad. The problem with doing it people who you really love is, oh, no, you're perfect. No, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with you. It's like you want someone who's really going to
Yeah.
give it to you straight
Yeah.
because they love you, and they really want to help. But it's up to you to let them know, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm not going to defend myself, and you can't defend yourself, because if you do, you blow the whole thing out of water.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't work. you got to be honest and be ready for your blind spots to be
Yeah,
revealed.
I was gonna say, like, if you're gonna do that, because I've done that, like, you really need to go in with a mindset of learning and curiosity and, like, just really want to know, like, what other people, like, truly think of you. And I'm lucky enough where I have that relationship with my husband where
Hmm.
honesty is one of our biggest value, and we're both straight shooter, maybe the straightest shooter of all time.
Two of the straightest I know.
and and it's just very important to us that, like, you know, as an example, sometimes uh, and I've seen this in myself in the past, and that's why when I say I'm gonna do something, I do it, which is exactly why I'm currently finally starting those interviews that I've been wanting to do forever.
Yeah.
um, but we keep each other accountable. So if Dave, my husband, always tells me I want to do this, I want to do this, or I'm acting a certain way. For example, recently, because I journal a lot to build awareness, and he saw that, and he started to give other people, like, hey, you should journal, and I just, called him out on it. I was like, you better start journaling if you tell other people to journal. Like, it can't just be a thing that you just say. Like, you have to do it. The same thing with you. You can't keep telling people that you're gonna start this thing, or you should be there, or you should do this. It's like, you have to do it, and you need the person next to you that at a point they're going to be, hey, like, it's time to pull the plug and move forward, because I can't hear you anymore just talk about the same problem without bringing a solution, or just whine about the same thing again without bringing a solution, or just keep having this floating dream in the air but keep whining about your current situation and not do anything about it. You, like, need someone to, like, sometimes just get you out of that.
That's so true. I don't know. Did you know how I got into this field of sports psychology? Have you heard
Yes,
of it,
I think
Melissa?
so. But please say it to everyone.
Okay, so guys, everyone who's watching this, listen to this. So I am a high school teacher. This was like over 10 years ago. Three kids, happily married, things are going really well. And I was exactly what Camille just said I was doing. And it was a good job. It was great. I was teaching, but I would always come home and talk this big game
Mm.
about helping athletes and helping people and going out there and being a mental performance coach and doing it. But I wasn't executing. I was just going my 9 to 5 job, just doing it every single day. And Melissa is like my number one supporter. She will do when I'm going to do this. Go get him, babe. Yeah, yeah. And she would always say that. Yeah, it's a great idea. Do it. So one night we're going to bed and turn the lights off, and I'm just kind of like talking in the dark, and she's laying right there. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a mental skills coach one day, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to help athletes. And all of a sudden she kind of whispers, she goes, you're all talk. And her back was to me, and I can't see her, so I'm like feeling the bed, and I feel her shoulder, and I said, and I lean over, I turn on my lamp, I said, what did you just say? And she sits up and she looks at me right in the eyes and she goes, you're all talk. I was like, what do you mean? She says, you always talk about that. You always say that you're going to do great things and blah, blah, blah. You always say it. You haven't done anything about it. You're all talk. Lays down and goes back to bed. That literally was the defining moment of my career. Where the next morning it lit a fire. I didn't even sleep that night. I lit
I
a
bet.
fire in
I
me,
bet.
and I called up graduates programs, and from that moment on, started my got into grad school, went to school, and then entrepreneurship, and then 10 years later, here we are. But you're right. It takes that person who can hit you right between the eyes with that truth.
Yeah, I really think that, like, it, for me, I had my own trigger, which is just completely different, but I just had a lot of people, when I grew up, always talking about how they, because you hear this all the time. People are like, "Oh, if I wanted to, I could have been a
Yes,
pro,
yes. If
whatever,
I want,
or,
yeah, yep.
I could have done that. Yeah, I started my, I wanted to be a doctor, but
Yep,
and then
yep,
they
yep.
tell you why being a doctor isn't, like, a good thing, or, like, how they wouldn't be happy if they were that thing that they should have or could have been. And I think like for me, the that I heard it so much growing up, that just the idea of being that person when I would be older, it like sparked really something inside me. And from, I think, when I was maybe, well, I started CrossFitting and studying in chemical engineering at 20 years old. And literally since I have been 20, one of the biggest thing in my life is just this no regret and no coulda or shoulda, and just try to completely own wherever I'm at, and just find solution for the next thing. But I do think that some people like comes from all different type of experience, but definitely having someone that is gonna sometimes just like slap you in the face is
Right.
very efficient.
Yes, that's so true. And it might be painful. It might at first trigger some anger or some frustration or even some pain. But then when the dust settles, you're like, you know what? Thank you. I needed that hard truth.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think everything I've learned in my life was always in the hardest, most brutal way for my very sensitive heart.
Right.
um,
Right.
but definitely
And
the
that's why I
best.
like pro sports. Like for
Me
example,
too.
elite CrossFit and pro sports is you work so hard to be great and you're competing against people who are also working hard to be great. Not to mention
Mhm.
these are the greatest athletes in the world all vying for the exact same thing. You are going to have some agonizing defeats.
Yeah.
When you lose, it's going to hurt so much because you work so hard. But then you look back, and what I've learned from people like yourself and these elite athletes is like, I love it so much. All right, let's get back on the horse.
Yeah.
Let's get back up and do it again. What can I learn from it? Let's go. And
Yeah.
it's that component like, if you don't love it, then you can't do this because you're going to fail so much that,
Mhm.
and they're going to be agonizing failures, agonizing defeats,
Oh
and
yeah.
that it's like any rational person would never do it again. But you guys want it so bad, you love it so much. You're like, all right, let's go, let's get back in the arena, let's go with scars and blood, and I love watching you guys do it.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, I think it, for me, being a professional athlete brought so much perspective in my life, because um I used to like, I never cared about talking in front of camera because it would never feel like there's people. Um, but like just walking in an arena with a lot of people, I would realize that there's a lot of people watching. And um, I kind of liked that I was in my lane, so I wouldn't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
have to.
literally.
Yeah, literally. So I wouldn't have to look around and see like the amount of people. But I failed in front of millions of people. Like I didn't fail like you know in a I did fail some like school tests and things like that, where literally no one see that you got like a bad grade and things like that. And that's also heartbreaking. But I failed in front of so many people, and at a degree that is really high. And people name calling you, like saying that you're a failure and you're over and you're this and you're that, and they don't know you. It brought me so much perspective of like, at the end of the day, literally no one gives a shit. Like no
Yeah,
one
right.
gives a shit like but you. So
Right,
it's been so good in my life to have that, because now I'm like, you know what? If I want to do something, so what? Like
right.
who's really going to make me feel that bad about me trying to follow my dream, or maybe failing on my face again? So now, I've started my own business, and I've already failed like a million times in different ways, but it's part of learning. And I'm able to keep my head up because I don't feel like a failure. It's just learning, and that's it. Like there's
I
nothing
oh,
else.
that is so true. And how did you learn that? Was that from a young child? Is that it? Like how did you? Because there are some people who are watching this and
Yeah,
they hear you talk, they're like, that's like earth shattering to them. Wait, you're
yeah,
okay with failing? But at the same time is, I know like you don't want to fail. Like a lot of people think, oh yeah, elite athletes, they're good. it's okay to fail. It's like, no,
Oh
it's not
no, no, no,
okay
no,
to
no.
fail. Yeah,
No, no, no.
but you can learn from it. But now, how did you like develop that?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm not okay with failing. I just understand the purpose of failing.
Mm,
And failing is learning. I go home and I want to punch a freaking hole in the wall and I tell myself never again. And that's the power of failing is when you go home and you say never again. Like as an
mm.
example, the first time we swam in the water at the CrossFit game, um, I fell in ice water when I was a kid and I forgot about it. And when we ran in that 50-degree water, it all came back and I had a full on panic attack. And I still, obviously went through the whole event because I'm you
You're
know,
Camille.
I'm Camille. Yeah. Um, but after that event, I just remember I didn't tell like that exact story. I didn't tell it to anyone for a long time, but I said never again. So I started to take ice cold shower morning and night, ice bath. I would go in the freezing cold water twice a week, and I became very good at it. And that was it. It was over. But going back for where this all started for me, because it started really young. Um, I'm from this super tiny school, and we just we pretty much every one of my sport team kind of sucked compared to to all compared to the other school because I'm from a really small town. Um, so we would pretty much always lose, and I had to, and I was so competitive that I was like, why can't everyone else in the team just die like me, like and just just
So all of your teams were bad.
oh yes, like I
Wow,
played
that's tough.
oh you can't even like one of the last sport I played before finding CrossFit was rugby, and we were part of this team, and literally me and my twin were like new in the team, and we we scored some points, and they some girls started to cry, and we're like, what's going on? And we're like, it's the first time we make like any points, and I was
Oh.
like, oh my goodness, what the heck. And they had this huge party after. They were like, you guys have to drink in the
Oh my
shoe, do all like
gosh.
that stuff. um, but I had to learn really, really young to quantify and qualify myself with my effort. So I wouldn't go
Wow.
crazy like by, killing myself on the field and we would lose anyway. So
Wow.
instead of like giving up, I was like, all right, you know what? We're not going to win, but I'm going to make it as hard as possible for you, and then I'll just go home and know I did a good job. And
Wow.
that was a great experience because I think it really translated to the rest of my life and everything I do now.
Wow. That's awesome. That one thing I just really want to highlight for your viewers is like you said something really intriguing to me. Never again. Never again. When you fail, it's never again.
Mm-hmm.
People who have a bad relationship with failure, a lot of them say, "Here we go again. Here we
Mm,
go again. Here we go again."
that's
But
true.
those with a better mindset, like you're like yourself, where you can learn from it, it's like never again. Where it's like, no, this isn't. I'm not going to identify with this. I'm going to learn. I'm not. This isn't who I am, and I'm going to get better. As opposed to people who do fail. I knew that was going to happen. Here we go
Yeah.
again, and so it's kind of their identity, and it's almost like this
Mm,
self-fulfilling prophecy that they put on themselves. But that's a great
mm.
story. I've known you for years, and I've
I've
never
never told you that
really
one.
never knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what happened when you grow up in a city that there's more cows
Right.
than people, and you still have to go play against the big city.
Wow. The big city.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh, that's
yeah.
hilarious.
But yeah, I think you know, like looking back at what I hear a lot, and going back for me when I was 20 years old, I think sometimes we surround ourselves with um, you know, so I don't know how to say it. Like I think there's a difference between being goal oriented and like results focused. Where
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
for me, like goal oriented would be more like yes, like I would like to be the best in the world. I would like to have a successful business and yada yada. But also like understanding that the goal is still like a self development with knowledge development. I would like to know more about this and learn more about that. And I think it's really hard for people to cope in failure a lot more when your expectation are around a number specifically, because trust me, life like keeps hitting you in the face. But if I look back at the 20 years old me that started competing, at a world level, it was a lot more of this, oh, if I'm not in the top 10, I'm not going to be relevant anymore if I don't do this. And now I'm in the top 10, so now I have this pressure. And as I got a lot older, was just in my head, it was, I want to be this person. And like going through sport and failure, I want that to bring me to that person, the best version of me. And that became just so much easier to like try to reach my full potential. But I think like the first part, I see it all the time with other athletes, and they're just never happy. And I get it. They're never happy if they don't win. And I almost want to go to them sometime and be, but how did you even think you were going to win? You like skip your accessory work. You like, you still go out on the weekend. Like, it just, sometimes in my head, it like makes no sense of having the expectation that don't fit with the journey behind you, and it can be very destructive.
I completely agree, and you're absolutely right. A lot of people, their habits are not on par or in alignment with the dreams and the goals that they have, and that is so true. But they tell themselves that it is. They are.
Yeah.
They tell themselves like, "Oh no, I am." And sometimes it's like we've been talking about lack of self awareness, and
Mm.
sometimes it's just delusion. They just don't want to
Yeah.
look at the facts and the truth. And like that phrase goes, everyone wants to be a champion, but not everyone wants to do what champions do
Yes.
and prepare like champions. And so you bring up a really good point in terms of, are you going to be results oriented, or you
Mm.
a kind of orientation, or a process mindset? This is the process, and not necessarily enjoying the journey, but creating. Yes, you want to enjoy the journey, but are you willing to embrace the boredom of
Yes.
consistency, as we talk about, and doing those little mundane, boring things that will lead to the results? What's hard about being solely results focused is that, especially at the elite level, especially at the,
Mm-hmm.
is that you have hundreds of other people who are just as elites and
Yes.
physically talented, who are have the exact same goal as you.
Yeah.
And so rather, everyone has that goal. Like, she does, and she does, and he does. Everyone does. It's like everyone wants to win the major league, the World Series. Everyone wants to win the Super Bowl. Everyone wants to make it to the Hall of Fame. Now, okay, we all have the same goals. Now, who's going to embrace the process the best? Because everyone at that level is really talented. Now it comes down to who's willing to put in that work and then show up, obviously, when it matters most. But you brought up a really good point. There might be someone watching who's really frustrated because they're not getting the results
Yeah.
that they want, or it's not coming fast enough, or they're working really hard and they're on social media and they see someone not working as hard and getting the results that they want,
Yeah.
but that person's not working as hard or as long as I am.
Yeah.
And not even taking into consider genetics and what they're like, there's a lot of things we don't know and we don't see.
Yes.
And so I agree with you in that. Maybe start shifting your focus on, instead of the results, just lock in on the process.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe set the bar. Okay, what do you want to achieve? Okay, now go put it on the shelf, and then identify, okay, if I'm going to achieve those results, what do I need to do every single day to
Mm-hmm.
move the needle? Every day. Like, what do I need to do every day? And then put your head down and execute those things, focus on that process, and then occasionally pick your head up to see how far you've come.
Yeah.
Great, put it back down, and obviously, and then watch the results take care of themselves. And you might even get better results than you had initially imagined.
Yes. Okay, I want
Yeah.
like to ask you one last question. We have like
Okay.
11 minutes left here. Um,
Okay.
I This is so good. I love all of this. My last question to you would be, I think like, and this is I see all the time with my nutrition athlete, like the athlete I coach, like almost literally anyone I work with that like start a project with me and things like that. It seems to be very, very hard for people to keep their motivation after the 2 weeks mark. For some reason, and for what I've experienced, it seems to be this 2 weeks to a month. Like people get really excited to start a project and they like just show you their work, and then 2 weeks or a month hit, and like something happened where like the something is not meeting whatever expectation they have from return, and maybe it's just not experiencing that. For me, it took me like uh, you know, a whole life of training in different sport plus like 5 years of supreme focus to win the CrossFit game. And who knows, maybe if my body was just a tiny bit different or my discipline, I wouldn't have made it, but it would still have been the best thing that I could have done in my sport career. But do you have any tricks for people to just stay on it? Because yes, it's a freaking mundane work and just do the work, but it's not that easy.
Yes, that is so true. So, yeah, anyone who is going through it, if you're going to start a new behavior or habit, there's a couple of principles to remember. So number one is motivation comes and goes. It will
Mm-hmm.
come and go. It all comes down to discipline. So the first thing you have to understand right off the bat, if you're going to try something new, is to know that just mark it down because it's going to happen. When motivation leaves, your autopilot needs to be disciplined. You have
Yeah.
to have the mindset to tell yourself, I'm going to execute this whether I feel like it or not. Because if you really want to execute these things, a lot of the times, if not most of the times at first, you're not going to feel like doing it. And so it's you
Yeah.
got to click into your identity. So just your discipline. So that's number one. Number two is you got to really, in order to kind of add some fuel to the fire to do it, you got to add a purpose, label, tag a purpose to it. Like really
Mm-hmm.
commit to, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to change my nutrition? Why am I trying to do this new workout regimen or this
Mm-hmm.
program or whatever it may be? That has to be primary. And a little kind of a caveat to that, you need to put that why in front of you. Like you
Yeah.
got to be able to see it because it's one of those things out of sight, out of mind. You want to be able to look and take a look at your why as much as you possibly can. Number three, you got to understand that your habits are going to go through a phase. So at first, it's going to be unbearable. If you stick with it, they're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you stick with it, they're going to be unbreakable.
Yeah.
So you have to know that process and know that, okay, this is the unbearable phase. This is the phase where I don't want to do it. I'm kicking and screaming. Just being aware of it will help you navigate through it. Okay, the next one's uncomfortable. Okay, this is uncomfortable. And then it becomes something that you just naturally normally
Mm-hmm.
do. The next thing as well is you set yourself up for failure when you try to bite off more than you can chew.
Mm.
And so a lot of times you might look at something and you want to overhaul everything, nutrition, or and then I want to learn Spanish, and then I want to play guitar, and then I want to start my business. Pump the brakes. Let's just do one thing at a time. And just that one thing, let's even chop that down to even make it as simple as you can do it to as easy as you, because what we're about is you want to build progress. It's progress over perfection. And what you want to do is you want to be at the end of the night, you want to be able to go to bed and say, oh, I took a step closer.
Yes.
I did that. You know what? I drank more water today, or more a gallon, whatever. I don't just want to act like I know what I'm talking about. But basically, you want to be able to measure progress. And another suggestion I would say is put up a calendar and a blank calendar, and every time you do it, put a smiley face into it. And then the next day, a smiley face, and then look and see how long of a smiley face chain you can create, how long of a chain you can create, and then all of a sudden it will become a habit.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now let's make it a little bit more difficult. Now what's going to happen is when people try to bite off more than they can chew, then they stop doing it for a couple of days. Then they start feeling bad.
Yeah.
Then they're like, oh man, I don't even want to feel bad. So I abandon it altogether. I'm going to stop calling my nutrition coach because they're going to make me feel bad. I'm going to unsubscribe because every time I see them or look at the YouTube channel, it's going to make me, it's going to make me feel like I'm a bad person,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a quitter. And then all of a sudden you get back in your old habits, which is all normal. It's all
Yeah.
about those basic principles that I would say to help you stick with it.
I love that. I think it's exactly like one thing about you, and I know it's like one of your saying that you put everywhere is just little by little becomes a lot. And for example, like during my first 12 week of pregnancy, where I was so sick, literally like glued to the bed with the trash next to me, couldn't work out, couldn't really do much, get dizzy every time, and just that little saying, little by little, really helped me because every day I would write like two of the smallest thing to do in my day, but just knowing that I did something, anything for my business I was like, okay, it's a win, and I'm not like completely quitting on everything I've built. I really truly love that, and I think for me, like doing those type of exercise is your little becomes a little bigger as the first little becomes a habit. So your first little can be just like when the alarm ring, I get up, and like that's my first little every day. That little commitment to the alarm, and now that becomes a habit. So now my second habit becomes I make my bed, and now that's just normal. So now it becomes I journal, and then I think like for me like building that really freaking boring mundane life to become the best athlete I could be was like that, and literally waking up with my alarm was a life changing experience when I was 21. I was like, I'm never gonna sleep again if my alarms ring, and making that first commitment back then when I was 21, it really helped me to stop quitting in anything pretty much. And it
Wow.
was like if I say I do this workout all the way, even though the mental dialogue might have been, let's just do two run, and then the two runs over, I'm like, go to three. All right, now just finish. But you
Right.
still like, I think like those tiny commitment are very very powerful, and now because I'm talking with you, I'm definitely going back to making sure to keep my own self accountable for all
That's
of this
awesome.
because you I'm so against people who just talk and don't do.
Right, right, right.
So if I talk about things I've done in the past that I might have let go a little, like definitely like you know talking to other people about that stuff really helps like putting you back on track. So okay,
Right.
thank you so much for coming along. Please brag about yourself right now. Tell us where we can find you because your podcast is unbelievable. I recommend it to everyone that I know, and you have books and you do seminars. So please tell everyone where they can find
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you so much. And this was so fun talking to you. I felt like we were just having a normal conversation.
Yeah.
It was just you and I just hanging out. So yeah, I think the easiest place to find me is on Instagram at Justin Sua. You can find my podcast, Increase Your Impact, and just a little teaser for that. They're short. They're really, really
Yeah,
short, three
it's
to five
perfect.
minutes long. I made it for the busy person. It's not long, a little something every weekday, and yeah, very, very easy. Wrote a couple of books, one for parents, one for teenagers. You can find those on Amazon. Just type in Justin Sua, and then the two books will pop up. But yeah, thanks for having me again, Camille.
Thank you so much for being here, and go
Thank
check
you.
go check him out, guys. He might change your life in the best way, but maybe ruin it a little first.
I love it. Thanks.
All right.